Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment Preliminary Recommendations virtual meeting. We're happy to be here with you all. My name is Atara Margulies, and I'm a master planner in the Down County Division, and I'm just going to give a few housekeeping announcements before we get started with the real presentation. So hopefully everybody who's in here knows how to use Teams. If not, the main thing is just to keep yourself on mute, which would be at the top bar across your screen, the little microphone icon, so that we don't get any background.
Not hearing.
If you're not hearing anything, can someone chat her and let her know that we'll help her out? Try and keep yourself on mute for the presentation so we don't get any background interference. There will be a question and answer opportunity when Elza is finished presenting. So try and hold your questions until then. You can put questions in the chat during the presentation. If you look at the top bar, there's a little chat function. It looks like a little conversation bubble. Everybody will be able to see, but if you put questions in there, we have staff monitoring the chat, and then they'll be able to read that question. Or if you're comfortable during the Q&A, you can raise your hand using the hand symbol, and then staff will call on you and you'll be able to say your question. So we got plenty of time for questions at the end. And if you're having any audio issues, you can either write in the chat or you can email me. I'm the one who sent you the link to get in here in the first place, and I will try and help you on the side with any tech issues. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elza Heisel-McCoy, the Chief of Down County Planning, for the presentation.
Atara, thanks very much. Good evening, everybody. My name's Elza Heisel-McCoy. I'm the chief of the Down County Planning Team with Montgomery Planning. We do master planning and review development applications for the portion of Montgomery County inside the Capital Beltway. Tonight we're here to talk about the preliminary recommendations for the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment. Before I introduce the rest of the team that's here, I want to recognize Angela Gear from Council President Friedson's office. So thanks for coming, and thanks to everybody else. So Atara has introduced herself. We also have Jesus Beck and Darcy Buckley on the team. If you could just introduce yourselves briefly.
Sure. Hi, I'm Darcy Buckley. I'm in our countywide planning division, the focus on transportation.
Jesus?
Hi, I'm Jesus Beck. I'm the Adequate Public Facilities Planner. In other words, I do schools analyses.
And then we also have Henry Coppola from the Parks Department. Henry, can you introduce yourself, please?
And my camera on too. Hi, everybody. I'm Henry Coppola. I'm the Parks Long Range Planning Supervisor. So I'm here to help develop parks.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, can we see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. I only have one screen. So, okay. So again, thanks to everybody for coming. This is a presentation of the preliminary recommendations for the Minor Master Plan Amendment for the Bethesda to the Bethesda Downtown Plan. This is sort of where staff is at the moment. There are some things that are ongoing, so we don't have all of the recommendations and answers here tonight, but we're working on getting those ready for the draft next month. So tonight, I'm going to do a bit of introduction and background. And I can't remember if Atara mentioned this earlier, but this is being recorded, so be advised of that. And this will be available, the recording of this will be available on our website shortly. So we're going to go through some introduction and background, answer the question, what is the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment? Talk about the implementation questions we've been considering, go through our outreach and what we have been hearing in those conversations, go through the preliminary recommendations, and then on to next steps. So by way of introduction and background, Bethesda is a thriving urban center, an economic engine for the county, one of the county's most desirable communities, home to over 17,000 residents, 33,000 jobs, parks, shops, the arts, movies, and more, with excellent transit, pedestrian, and bike networks. The minor master plan amendment is an amendment of the 2017 Bethesda Downtown Plan, which was itself a 4-year collaboration between residents, property owners, staff, the planning board, and the county council for a 20-year vision of sustainability, accessibility, equity, and innovation for affordable housing near jobs, shopping, and recreation, safe tree-lined sidewalks, bikeways, and streets, and new parks and open spaces. Since the 2017 plan, the planning board has approved over 7 million square feet of development, about 3 million square feet of which has been built. This includes 1.25 million square feet of office, over 300,000 square feet of retail, 2,800 residential units, and over 400 moderately priced dwelling units, which are the county's primary affordable housing program unit. There's been progress in implementing the parks recommendations for the 3 civic greens, the Eastern Greenway parks, and recently the planning board approved the Parks Department to acquire property along Montgomery Avenue in East Bethesda, just by the Purple Line tracks for parkland there. There have been new bikeway and pedestrian improvements, and traffic in schools are operating within standards. So where are we now? So the Bethesda Downtown Plan capped total development at 32.4 million square feet based on a 2016 assessment of transportation infrastructure capacity. So how much new development could the transportation network take as the test was conceived in 2016. The plan recommends a check-in when total development reaches 30.4 million square feet, which it did last fall. Since 2017, there have been many new buildings completed, but not as many new public amenities. There have been $15 million in park impact payments, but no new parks complete, though many are underway. So this check-in is the minor master plan amendment that we're talking about tonight. So what is the MMPA? So the minor master plan amendment scope of work covers the same plan area as the Bethesda Downtown Plan, the map shown on your right, the area outlined in black with a white background. This minor master plan amendment is focused solely on implementing current recommendations. It's not envisioning any changes to specific zoning, park, or other recommendations, and follows the standard master plan process. So this is sort of the chutes and ladders version of the process. The staff works with the community to develop recommendations. Those recommendations are presented to the planning board, who can modify those recommendations, and then they go to the county council for final review and approval. And we are right now in the preliminary recommendation stage as we prepare to head into the working draft. So implementation areas to explore the minor master plan amendment, we'll be looking at economic questions of economic development, park development, transportation improvements, schools, affordable housing, and the recommended community recreation center. The questions that we've been asking, and these are, if some of you I know have been at previous public meetings we've been having public meetings since May and June. These are the questions that we've been looking at. Is a development cap necessary in downtown Bethesda? If so, does it need to be raised? Are there alternative approaches that would work better? How do we ensure that public infrastructure like roads and schools can support future growth? What are the top priority public improvements recommended in the plan? And does the minor master plan amendment need to provide additional incentives to realize them? Is the park implementation strategy in the 2017 plan still the right one? And could any of the implementation recommendations be modified to better achieve the goals of the plan? So what we've heard, we've been doing engagement on an ongoing basis since May. We visited the farmers market. We've had in-person and virtual meetings in several rounds. One, to introduce folks to the plan and invite everybody to participate. Over the summer, we did a series of workshops on how plan visions are built. We also recorded that, and that's available on our website, as is the introduction and invitation presentation. And then we're now doing a series of public meetings to go over the preliminary recommendations, tonight being the second. We had one last week at the library, and we'll have another one this coming Saturday at the Chevy Chase Town Hall, featured in the image on the right. We've also had numerous talks with the Bethesda Downtown Plan Implementation Advisory Committee, which is a volunteer group made up of residents and business and property owners to advise staff on the implementation of the recommendations of the 2017 plan. And we've also had individual and small group conversations with residents and developers. So we've heard the top community priorities pretty consistently: new parks, a new recreation center, improvements to the existing pedestrian network, preserving naturally occurring affordable housing, and expanding the tree canopy. Comments we've heard from residents: Bethesda is a growing urban center, but some folks are concerned that development has been coming too fast. The development cap should be tied to achieving public infrastructure and amenities. Religious and nonprofit properties should be exempt from any development cap for modest improvements. Construction-related interruptions to the pedestrian network need to be better managed. Bethesda needs more affordable housing for all income levels. Loading and delivery management remains an issue, and driving in Bethesda can be a challenge. From the development community, we've heard that new development brings many benefits to Bethesda, that the real estate market is not expected to pick up in the near future, and the development cap creates significant uncertainty in helping those projects move forward. We've heard that the front-loaded park impact payment, which we'll go into a little bit more detail shortly, is a financing challenge. And that implementation of the new civic greens. These are the largest public parks spaces recommended in the plan. This is the Capitol Crescent Civic Green at Woodmont and Bethesda, the Veterans Park Civic Green, the expansion of Veterans Park and Woodmont Triangle, and the Bethesda Farm Women's Market. That the delays of these projects are not due to a lack of park funding, but by Purple Line construction, multi-party contract negotiations, and property owners uninterested in selling. So to jump into the preliminary recommendations, we've organized them by the questions that we went through earlier. So first, is a development cap necessary in downtown Bethesda? This is a slide. This was the takeaway slide from the summer workshop on building master plan visions. Master plans address many interconnected pieces of the built environment. So buildings, streets, parks, sidewalks, bike lanes, and more. Implementation requires many partners, public and private, and many tools. Plan visions are for 20 years, but they are built project by project, and that the real estate market and the economy in general guide the pace of development and public investment. So when the economy is booming, there's more development. When the economy is slowing down, such as the period we're in now, where construction prices are high, financing is expensive, the pace of development slows down. So the Minor Master Plan is looking at ways to make the tools work better for downtown Bethesda. And one of those tools is density levels. So why and how plans set density levels? Master plans use, one way is that master plans use building height and density to shape a vision for the built future of a community. These density levels are typically based on the zoning that is mapped to each site. So if you're looking at a map of downtown Bethesda, every property will have a zoning designation mapped to it. For downtown Bethesda, the building heights and densities allowed balance high-rise development on Wisconsin Avenue and transition to lower buildings at the single-family scale communities at the edges. Master plans also set density levels to make sure that the transportation and other support networks can accommodate the recommended growth over the next 30 years. The plans also include recommendations to enhance and expand those networks, including transportation, schools, and other improvements. So density levels in Bethesda. And 2017, the Bethesda downtown plan capped the development at a level based on a projection of how long it would take car drivers to get through particular intersections in 2045. That was the standard that was used. Beginning in 2020, the council approved a different standard, so that rather than focusing on automobile single occupant vehicles going through intersections, the new measurement changed to evaluate potential growth's larger impact on the surrounding areas more broadly, including expanded focus on non-motorized modes of travel and access to desired destinations. The development level set by the minor master plan amendment will be based on this new measurement. So the standards that are used, there are 5 metrics. So that projected impacts to the transportation network from plan recommended development include 5 metrics. So that is the number of jobs accessible within a 45-minute car or transit ride, auto and transit travel times for any purpose, vehicle miles traveled by residents in the community, so how far folks had to go to drive for any reason, the percentage of trips not taken by single occupant vehicles. This is also called the NADMS, you may have heard. This is how many trips people are taking on foot, by bike, by transit. And then finally, access to low stress bicycle infrastructure. So measuring the minor master plan amendment transportation impact, for these 5 tests, every master plan has a measurable density limit. As I said before, this is typically based on the mapped zoning for each site. So we go through and look at all the recommended zoning for every site, do the math, how much development would then be allowed for each site. We add that up, we test that number. In Bethesda, developers can purchase of the mapped zoning, which makes it difficult to predict the likely new development in Bethesda over the 20-year life of the plan. So what we are doing is measuring transportation impact based on density absorption, so the amount of density approved by the planning board since 2017. This is a very conservative estimate, unlikely to be sustained over the life of the plan. Certainly the first couple of years after the plan's approval, so the highest levels of approved development, and since then, really the last 5 years, it's been 50 to 60% of those initial limits. So the estimate is very conservative. Staff is testing the development scenarios for the life of the plan. So plans have roughly a 20-year lifespan. 20 years puts us out to 2037. We're looking at then potential density out to sort of the range of 2035 to 2045. And these studies are still ongoing, so we don't have the results of those for tonight, but we will have them next month. And these will include and address potential schools impacts. So how do we ensure public infrastructure can support future growth? There was a comment we heard from a resident that development should be tied to achieving public infrastructure, and it is. Existing tools that achieve master plan recommendations include frontage improvements. So this is when a site is redeveloped, the developer at their expense improves the sidewalks to current standards and also provides bike lanes, street lights, street trees, everything else at their expense. There's also local area transportation review, which for downtown Bethesda is focused more on transit, bike, and pedestrian improvements, but those are made by private developers at their expense with each project. And then on the public side, improvements are made through the capital improvement program, and that has included a lot of bike lanes in downtown Bethesda. So in terms of preliminary recommendations for transportation improvements, I think we're looking to recommend to continue that local area transportation review per the growth and infrastructure policy to improve pedestrian, bike, and transit-related alternatives to driving. The growth and infrastructure policy is updated every 4 years. It's in the process of being updated. now, and it sets the standard for how transportation impacts and other impacts are reviewed for development applications throughout the county. The minor master plan amendment supports a number of ongoing and recently completed studies. So it supports implementation of the loading management districts recommended by the urban loading study completed completed last year that focused on Bethesda. Supports the planning DOT curbside management study that's beginning this year. Supports the Department of Permitting Services and the Department of Transportation's management of construction-related sidewalk closures. DOT's study of enhanced transit service connecting downtown Bethesda to nearby centers, and also recommends updated priorities for project completion, CIP capital project completion. We're not recommending any new capital projects, but the plan has a recommendation for the prioritization of those. Some of those have already been completed, so we're looking to update those priorities. Incentivizing top priority public improvements. So the first one we heard loud and clear is new parks and park improvements. So through the minor master plan amendment recommendations, the Parks Department will continue to work to implement the plan recommendations. We'll continue to refine implementation strategies as necessary to adapt to changing conditions. I think, nobody foresaw the pandemic in 2016, 2017, and development of all types, parks, schools, new apartment buildings have all had to adjust. Retail, office have all had to adjust to these new conditions. Parks Department is no different. And the Parks Department will continue to seek advice from the Bethesda IAC. And there's also the question of updating the PIP. What a PIP? So the PIP is the Park Impact Payment. In downtown Bethesda, developers can request density above the zoning that's mapped to their site. This is called BOS density. For this density, when they get building permit, developers make a park impact payment to the Parks Department based on the amount of density they're approved for. And then the Parks Department uses these funds to buy, or can use these funds to buy new land for parks recommended in the plan, or to build the park itself. In 2017, the BOS, the Bethesda Overlay Zone, set the PIP rate at $10 per square foot of BOS density with inflationary adjustments every 2 years. Most recently, in 2023, adjusted to $12.49 per square foot. We have hired a consultant to analyze overall development cost in downtown Bethesda, including park impact payments, and quantifying the benefits of development locally and countywide. That analysis is also forthcoming. Based on that analysis, the minor master plan will consider updating implementation of the PIP. So some of those implementation questions are, is the current PIP rate the right number? Would the benefits of a higher rate outweigh the cost? Park impact payments for larger projects can be $1 to $2 million. The largest one, I want to say for Marriott, was over $5 million. For smaller projects on smaller sites, they're closer to $250,000. The higher the PIP rate, the more money comes in, assuming the development moves forward. But if the PIP is too high, then the development won't happen and there won't be any park impact payments. Are there other changes to the PIP that would make development more market responsive and therefore more likely to happen and generate more PIPs? And we're also looking at whether changes to the structure and timing of the PIP could be coupled with increases to the PIP rate. For a new recreation center, the minor master plan amendment is looking to recommend incentivizing public-private partnerships, or that a rec center be provided as a developer amenity. The image on the right is the Wisconsin Place Recreation Center in Friendship Heights that was built by the developer at their expense, with the building you see behind it, and then dedicated to the county. We are considering recommending a park impact payment for land area dedicated to a new recreation center. Recommending designating the new recreation center as a major public facility. The CR zone, which is a mixed use zone, that is the primary zone that's used in Bethesda, requires public benefits. There's a list of public benefits in the zoning ordinance, and master plans prioritize those public benefits in keeping with the vision of the plan. So the current plan does not list recreation center as a major public facility to prioritize for new development. And then we're also considering allowing additional building height to accommodate the recreation center. Supporting more affordable housing. We're looking at recommending ways to incentivize family-sized and units and deeper affordability. The Bethesda downtown plan and the Bethesda overlay zone increased the percent requirement for moderately priced dwelling units, which again is the county's primary affordable housing vehicle, from 12.5% of the new units in a new residential building to 15%. And provided a lot of incentives to encourage providing more affordable housing, but those recommendations don't get into much needed family size units. So these are 3, 4, and 5 bedroom units to accommodate families, and then a deeper affordability so that individuals and families with lower incomes would be able to afford those units. We're also looking at recommending that development in Bethesda strive for no net loss of naturally occurring affordable housing. These are typically, 2-3 story garden apartment type buildings. In Bethesda, you find them on Battery Lane and Bradley Boulevard that have sort of below market rental rates, below sort of the market average because they're older or don't have some of the same amenities. And when those properties redevelop, we want to make sure that we do what we can to make sure that we don't lose the affordable housing that's there. And then also looking at supporting codified standards for dealing with naturally affordable housing. There are currently codified standards for the moderately priced dwelling units and for workforce housing. So supporting standards for naturally occurring affordable housing. So then we're rounding the final turn, updating the Bethesda overlay zone to better achieve the goals of the plan. You may be asking yourself, what is an overlay zone? Overlay zones are master plan specific sections in the zoning ordinance that override the requirements of the underlying zone of a particular area. So there's a Bethesda overlay zone. There are overlay zones in downtown Silver Spring, in other communities, and they provide specific requirements and standards necessary to achieve the planning goals and objectives in a master plan. So they supersede the requirements that would apply sort of countywide and can provide incentives and also be more stringent. So many of the recommendations in the Bethesda downtown plan are implemented via that Bethesda overlay zone. So what does the BOS say? It includes, it defines and discusses BOS density, what it is, how you get it, the development cap, so how much total development is permitted in downtown Bethesda based on that transportation assessment. It has the rules for park impact payments, the 15% MPDUs, the public benefits that I mentioned. The Bethesda overlay zone has specific recommendations for those, and it also addresses public open space and a use or lose provision for that BOS density. So there are two particular elements of the BOS that we are focusing on in the preliminary recommendations. The first is the buying of BOS density. So the CR zones, these mixed use zones, set a total maximum density and then a maximum proportion of commercial and residential uses. So in the example of CR5, C4, R4.75, H175, that means that the total density on that site is limited to a 5 FAR. FAR is a multiple of the site area. So if you have a 5 FAR and you built a building that was the entire footprint of the site, you could do it 5 stories. If you did it half the site, 10 stories, etc. So 5 is the maximum total density for this mapped element, for this mapped designation. And then the commercial density would be limited to a 4 FAR, and the residential density would be limited to a 4.75 FAR. So in order under this framing of the zone, in order to maximize the density, you would have to have, if you wanted to do a strictly residential project, you would have to have a small amount, a 0.25 FAR of commercial density to hit that maximum number. And then the H is the maximum allowed building height. So the Bethesda overlay zone now requires that developers use all mapped density before buying BOS density. And for some properties that want to be single use, so solely residential and purchase BOS density, they can't do that. So to promote flexibility to meet market conditions, we are looking to recommend to allow projects to purchase BOS density for using all of the mapped commercial or residential FAR. And what that means is that you can have a purely, in a zone like this, you can have a purely commercial building. You can also have a purely residential building, and sort of a side benefit is that there's a higher park impact payment, because to get to the same total number, there's less mapped density, so you're buying more from the BOS. For the use or lose provision, in order to prevent hoarding of BOS density, so with the development cap, there's a limited quantity of development, and to avoid, one developer or a small group of developers sort of getting control of it all, the zone requires that projects get building permits within 4 years of approval, or the approval is revoked. In the first years of after the master plan was approved, that made sense. You had a lot of projects, a lot of applications coming to the board, and you had a lot of construction that started, within those first couple of years. More recently, with the change in the real estate development market and the economy in general, what this has meant is that it reduces flexibility to respond to market conditions for these projects. The subdivision ordinance, which is the rules that govern how land is described. So if you have a plat for your property, your plat is conforming with the subdivision ordinance. There's an adequate public facilities finding that the planning board has to make. So for pretty much every development project, the planning board has to find that public facilities like roads and schools are adequate to serve the proposed development, and that requirement requires a building permit within 5 years. So to promote flexibility to meet market conditions and remove we're recommending removing the duplicative use or lose provision in the overlay zone. And then finally, improving the BOS public benefits. So we've talked a little bit about public benefits. The CR zone requires specific categories of public benefits. They're capitalized here because they are zoning ordinance terms. They are specific categories. The 2017 plan effort has significant discussion on public benefits. The overlay zone has very specific language and requirements for those public benefits. Coupled with that, the planning department is now working on a project called the Incentive Zoning Update, where we have staff looking sort of county-wide, doing a re-examination of public benefits. They've made recommendations to the planning board. The planning board has approved those recommendations to go up to the county council. So as we'll see in a moment with the schedule for this, I think the incentive zoning update and the minor master plan amendment may be at the council around the same time. And so the minor master plan amendment will have to address the relationship between the overlay zone and the incentive zoning update. Okay, so I know that was a lot. Closing out with the schedule, we've been working at this since June. We took a scope of work to the planning board. We've been in the community for longer than that. Over the summer, we did the workshops that I mentioned. So in September, this Thursday, the day after tomorrow, I will be giving this exact presentation to the planning board. And you can submit, if you're interested, you can submit comments to the planning board with your thoughts about the preliminary recommendations. And we will be getting the board's feedback, looking to any feedback provided by the resident and developer communities in Bethesda to guide us as we move from PowerPoint into Word. So as we work towards drafting, putting together a working draft is called of the minor master plan amendment for next month. So this will be the staff's recommendation for what the minor master plan amendment would say. It'll be a complete document. We are working then towards a planning board public hearing in November. Every master plan has a public hearing at the planning board. It'll be noticed 30 days in advance. And the purpose of the public hearing is to hear testimony in person, oral testimony, but also a written testimony on the specific recommendations in the draft plan. Looking to have after that work sessions with the planning board to refine the recommendations, make any changes that the planning board wants to make, and then it goes up to council. We're trying to get it up there by the end of the year, early next year. And then in winter of 25, the county council would have their public hearing at which you would be able to testify. County executive and agencies would have their review, and then the county council would conduct their review and hopefully approval. So I'm going to end on this. So staying connected and involved. This slide has my contact information. It has the website, the QR code, and written out. This presentation is on our website. On the minor master plan amendment website, you have the opportunity to sign up for an e-letter. This is the e-letter that we've continued over from the 2017 plan, and it is the best way to stay in touch with things that are happening in Bethesda and the minor master plan amendment. So I think with that, I will stop talking, stop sharing, and then turn it over to questions. Atara, how are we moderating questions?
Darcy is going to
Yes.
be the question moderator. She's here.
Awesome.
Okay, so the first question is, please explain what is naturally occurring housing and how is affordable development being incentivized?
Certainly. So naturally occurring affordable housing are existing housing that in the down county area typically is garden apartments. They were built in the 1940s. They are older. The units may be smaller. And so for the rents for those units are not at the current market rate. So they're not charging the same, they can't charge the same rent as new buildings. And so when sites are redeveloped, the planning department in the last, 3 or 4 years, starting with the Veers Mill plan, but also the downtown Silver Spring plan and the Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan amendment, had a recommendation to strive for no net loss. So there are a variety of potential tools to look at, ways to have replacement units, to have maybe more affordable housing than would otherwise be there. So to incentivize it, the incentives there are financial incentives that can be, that can come from the state, that can come from the federal government for affordable housing, that can come from the county. There are low-income housing tax credits. There are other things like that which incentivize affordable housing. For the planning department, for the zoning ordinance, the incentives are more density, so more buildable area than you might otherwise get. Or so for example, in downtown Bethesda, if you provide enough affordable housing, you don't have to make a park impact payment. If you're in a particular height incentive area that's designated in the zoning ordinance, you can get additional building height to accommodate affordable units. So it is definitely, I think, we would like to have more tools, but these are the tools that we have, and we're looking at ways to employ them creatively in Bethesda.
So our commenter wanted to make sure I read the entire question, because the last part said, this sounds very vague and unlikely to be successful strategy in this area, but I wanted to allow you to expand first. And she just had a follow-up that said, there are many examples where affordable housing has been taken down and what replaces it is drastically unaffordable. And then the follow-up question was, are you recommending any specific incentives for this amendment to the master plan?
So I think we're thinking about them. We haven't we haven't finalized them yet. I think in Bethesda, to date, the development has not really focused on areas with naturally occurring affordable housing. The exception is the Battery Lane district. So the Alden company that owns a lot of property up on Battery Lane did a very large sort of first step approval for a number of sites they own up there. And as part of that, again, this was sort of an early effort to address, retaining some of these affordable units. We negotiated with them an overall higher percentage of affordable housing than it would be required for a typical site over sort of the multi-phase. So I think and I don't know that any of those have come down yet. I think there's only maybe one project up there, one development that has an approved site plan, which is the last approval that you need before a building permit. So I don't think any of the garden apartments have come down yet. I think it's really more the commercial properties on Wisconsin Avenue and some of the smaller commercial properties in Woodmont Triangle that have come down to date.
Great. So now we have a question. Will the recommendation to eliminate the BOS deadline to building permit include a recommendation that applies retroactively to previously approved site plans? And do you anticipate an extension of time for existing site plan approvals until the zoning ordinance has been updated?
So at the moment, no. And that's simply because I think that's a little more detailed than we're thinking. So the preliminary recommendations are at a pretty high level as we get into even master plans. Master plans are sort of vision documents for 20 years. I don't know that it would be that specific in a master plan. I would encourage you to send an email to the planning board or to me. But we haven't, after a master plan is approved, if there are changes to the zoning ordinance that need to happen, there will be a separate process to amend the text of the zone. It's called a zoning text amendment that has public hearings. It goes to the planning board and the county council, and the zoning language would deal more specifically with that.
Thank you. All right, next we have a comment question that is the quote upgrade to the plaza in front of anthropology is sterile and uninviting. It was previously brick with a tree canopy and a fountain where people gathered. Now it is white concrete, lacks shade, and I rarely see anyone sitting there. Did the planning board approve this particular quote upgrade? And how can this kind of result be avoided in the future?
So interestingly, the Bethesda Row development was not approved by the planning board. It was essentially a by right development, very early in the stages of sort of that, the Bethesda Row area. So the planning board did not approve that. Had the planning board approved it, and this would have been, if there was, instead of 2 stories of commercial uses, if there had been, housing on top of it or something, then changes to the public space would have come through the planning board. But because the planning board did not approve it, it is we don't get to weigh in on the upgrades.
Thanks. And then the follow-up question to that is how much parkland is actually available for an improvement that is worth increasing the PIP at the expense of keeping building heights lower?
So I think that the 2017 plan set building heights in Bethesda, sort of, generally following sort of the tent principle, with 300 feet allowed on Wisconsin Avenue and tapering down. So those heights are the maximum heights are set. They were set in 2017. So we're not recommending that those heights change. I mean, in terms of parkland, before the 2017 plan, there were 4 parks in Bethesda. And because these, master plans are 20-year vision documents, we often, we make recommendations, understanding that they're not all going to be implemented. So the 2017 Bethesda downtown plan added 9 new parks. So from 4 parks to 13 parks, to be potentially implemented over the 20-year life of the plan. It sort of works that if a park is recommended in the master plan, then it is more likely to happen, though it may not, just because the land couldn't be acquired, or any number of reasons. Sometimes parks are recommended on sites where there's existing development. But if parks are not recommended in a master plan, then basically park staff, planning staff, the planning board really have very few tools to make a park there. So, more than double the number of parks in downtown Bethesda. The Parks Department has been working very hard. I feel like in the next 5 years, I think the Eastern Greenway parks may be coming online. It's, depending on what the Purple Line is happening with the Purple Line, the Capitol Crescent Civic Green across from the unpopular Anthropology Plaza. And, I think the Elm Street extension behind the Farm Women's Market, those are all parks that are, that will be considerably further along in 5 years' time.
Okay, and thank you, Richard. I think you have a question.
Yes, thanks. I want to recognize Dr. Richard Tustian is on this call. He was the first planning director, and probably no one has matched him since. I'm concerned that focus is unbalanced on this document and this work on parks. The sidewalks, bike infrastructure, and the speed of traffic in downtown Bethesda all contributes to either a better or worse outdoor experience. And that should be a consideration, an aesthetic as well as a functional consideration that is approached in the same way that you have come up with tools to manage the funding and the design of the parks. So the let's start with bikes. The new development has, for instance, Marriott has a wonderful passageway through from Woodmont to Wisconsin Avenue, hardscaped, but it's designed to attract people, not only to pass through, but to visit. And there is zero bike parking. The bike parking guidelines that exist to deal with this issue are reductionist tools. They're minimums, not aspirational, and they're not place specific. And they're haphazard. They come only with new development, and poorly so. With the advent of a great increase in biking by a wider range of people, the goals in the master plan for more bike access, we need bike parking that is premium, that is safe, intuitive, welcoming, at the front door, in the parks, and aspirational in design, artistic. And this could be best be done by something like implementing it in a BOS tool or an LATR tool, and using funding like we have in the PIP. So we can do it comprehensively and retroactively throughout the district. And I would say the same thing about our sidewalks and our bike lanes. They're fragmented. And with these fragments, it really isolates people and discourages people from making the bike trip at all, even on the parts that you can. So this could be approached in a very different way. You've done that with the parks. You have an LATR tool, have a BOS tool. I think that these should be incorporated functionally in those tools so that we look at this as a comprehensive plan or problem, and not as a piecemeal and reductionist approach. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I see another question. Just to let's clarify, are there opportunities for residents to provide input into public space design decisions, ideally before they're made, such as what was done outside the anthropology that removed trees that provided shade? This person does not consider that to be an upgrade as characterized.
So if the space is the result of a plan approved by the planning board, yes. So all development applications are noticed, and there's a notice that goes up on the site. Folks can provide comments to staff during the review period, which is 4 months, sort of a minimum of 4 months. And developers are required to have a pre-application meeting. And so folks can attend that and provide comments. And then when when staff presents sort of their review of the development application to the planning board, residents can also then provide comments. It's better always to provide them earlier, but can also provide comments. And because there are development review happens in stages, there's sort of a bigger picture review, which is called the sketch plan, and then there's the site plan, which is the more specific review. Providing comments at sketch plan can provide direction for developers to make adjustments for the next review. So there's definitely an opportunity there. On the park side, I know the park staff works hard. And maybe Henry, can you talk about sort of opportunities for community to engage on the park design?
Sure. Whenever we've got a new park being designed and coming on board, we try and do a robust community engagement process. There's normally similar to how there's sort of a project page for this master plan process. We have a similar park project website normally. That's a good way to follow along. There's community meetings. There's often surveys about it like that. The one that's been the most active in Bethesda recently has been the working titles to Bethesda Market Park, which is going to be the parking lots transitioning to being redeveloped into parks south of Elm Street Urban Park, and I'm going to say behind, and I'm trying to think of the right cardinal direction, east of the actual Bethesda Farm Women's Market there. That was last summer, a year ago, when there were a bunch of community meetings, and then that project's been a little bit on hold, but is starting to come together again. So that's a good example of kind of the engagement process that we try and do, and have plenty of opportunities for the community to be involved.
Okay, this is a popular topic. The next one is, let's see, okay. Is the planning board in charge of the park between the Giant and the library on Arlington Road? Will there be trees? Will there be trees and brick? And is the design plan for that park available?
That's the Caroline Freeland Park that is currently being upgraded. Henry, is there a site for that one?
Yes, there is. I'll go grab the link and put it into the chat. That should be reopening at some point later this fall. And the website with the link will have lots of info on everything that's going to be in there. But there will certainly be trees. I'm not sure about all the hardscaping. We'll have to take a look at the actual design page there. But certainly trees and sitting areas and landscape, plenty of landscaping, and revamped playground are kind of counter center points of that overhaul and renovation.
Okay. And then there's a question about the status of the Federal Realty possibly project proposed to rise on the parking lot behind the row of stores that includes the Apple Store to run from the corner of the Mexican restaurant to the Honda dealership. How high will that be, and with what retail and restaurants?
So that project got site plan approval, I want to say more than 6 months ago. I don't remember how tall the building is. If you shoot me an email, I will actually I will put Stephanie.Dickel is our at montgomeryplanning.org. She's our regulatory supervisor for the Down County team, Down County Regulatory Supervisor. And she can email her, and she can give you all of the deets, as the kids say, on that. In terms of the particular retailers, we don't know. So sometimes developers will come to us and say, we have a certain type of retail. Typically, this is, if there's going to be a supermarket, there's a certain size for that. And so you can sort of get a hint, but they won't be able to say the particular tenant. It's sort of too far out. They won't know who they're leasing it to. So from the planning board's, the planning board is approving a building with, a certain number of, dwelling units, a certain number of apartments, a certain, square feet of office space. The building's going to be a certain height. And there's going to be a certain square feet, a certain allowed area of retail, but that's really it as far as the planning board review and approval goes. So as the years, go on, and, retailers go out of business, new retailers move in, as long as the building stays the same, they don't come back to us. If the building needs to change for some reason, if they want to convert something to something else, that changes the terms of the approval, then yes, but generally we won't know. But reach out to Stephanie for the details on that that project.
Another one for Henry, I think. Do you know when the park on Arlington Road across from the Giant will be completed and opened?
Right, so that's Carolyn Freeland again, correct? I know it's scheduled to be opened at some point this fall. I know last time I was there last week or so, they were working on the landscape plantings, which means it's getting closer, but I do not have a specific date. The link, which is now in the chat for that project page, is going to have a timeline available, and that's a good place to keep an eye on because as they get closer and have an actual idea about when they'll be able to get it fully reopened, that's going to be a place where it'll get posted.
Great. I don't see any more comments in the chat.
Any more questions?
Someone asked the status of Battery Lane.
So the battery lane itself, or so the sort of battery lane I don't want to say master plan, but sort of the larger plan for battery lane included a reconfiguration of battery lane itself, with bike lanes and a double row of trees. And I think that's meant to be implemented sort of as projects are built. So there would be, sort of striping, but the curbs wouldn't move until construction starts. And I've not, again, once folks finish with us, they don't generally come back to us unless they need something. So I'm not sure of the timing for that, but I think the intent is that battery lane itself would be sort of redone, like it would be complete as those projects. And those projects are really probably, for all of them, 10 to 20 years. It looks like Richard, you have your hand up.
Yes, Elsa, thank you. Two things, try and be brief. The Bethesda Metro Station does not seem to have much attention in this work. I think the bus bay should be rethought, and the areas around the bus bay rethought, and an investment plan developed to make it into as much of a Union Station experience as creative people can think up. This is one of the gateways to Bethesda, and it's the heart of Bethesda, and it functions as a slap in the face in its current status. It's been the subject of discussions off and on over the years, but no emphasis has been given to it, and this plan should do that. Secondly, the recreation center is an important amenity. I think that we need several items, several pieces of public infrastructure, public buildings in downtown Bethesda to serve the community and function for a variety of uses. And that would be a first-class recreation center, a first-class library to replace the current one, and a civic space, a civic building for meetings. Silver Spring has a beautiful one. And this could be done along Arlington Road, or in combination with the redevelopment of the Bethesda Metro Bus Bay and the space above it, as part of a mixed-use project for a new tower. And I walked with Bethesda Urban Partnership when they contracted with project for public spaces many, many years ago with Fred Kent, the famous Fred Kent. And he opined that Arlington Road just had the structure and the placement of a major avenue, a major road that would have the kinds of public buildings that I'm describing. And we certainly need them on the other side, the Edgemore side, because we need greater height to enclose the Arlington Road space, give it a sense of enclosure. And lastly, I strongly suggest that we include in the plan a requirement to study the feasibility of reducing all the speed limits, posted speed limits on all the roads in the downtown sector plan. An area-wide speed reduction. This would automatically enhance pedestrian safety and level of comfort, as well as bicycle access and safety. And we could do this with 20-mile-per-hour posted speed limits for major roads and for secondary and tertiary roads, 15 miles per hour. Roads like Bethesda Avenue, like Fairmont Avenue, and so on. That area-wide thinking, I think, is what Bethesda is lacking. We saw some really good work done privately by Federal Realty with that kind of a sense of planning on several blocks. And it was a private plan. It may not have meet everyone's taste, but the idea of tackling these issues area-wide, I think, is essential. And the only language I see in the plan that deals with the issues of downtown Bethesda in that way are the parks. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, we don't have any more questions in the chat or hands raised at this moment.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for their time and their questions and comments. Please sign up for the e-letter if you haven't already. And we'll be hearing from the board on Thursday. We'll be in person this Saturday at 11 o'clock at the town hall in the town of Chevy Chase. And if you have any questions or other thoughts, please email me. My information's on the website. And again, yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good evening.